Good Friends by Orla McAlinden. Read by Katherine Murphy. Alice was beyond bored. She looked around the sidelines of the rugby club juvenile academy. Honestly, there's no one here. It's pointless. She stamped her feet, frozen in their Ugg boots. The damp grass was leaving a tide mark on the boots' soft suede. She feared it might be permanent. I might as well have worn trainers or a pair of fakes from Penny's for all this crowd would know or care. She inspected the throng of parents discreetly from under her tailored fringe. She viewed each face in turn. Nobody. 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 Her next glance rewarded her. That was somebody. Definitely. Now, she needed to work out who the woman was and how to orchestrate their meeting. Maybe she was a television personality. A roar went up from the small crowd around the pitch. Alice craned her neck, feigning all the enthusiasm she could muster. Clapping her numb hands together, she muttered to the person beside her, "Oh, well played! Who was it? I was a bit distracted for a moment." "Well now, Alice, do you not recognise your own son? Surely you can't have been looking at the referee's six-pack by any chance?" "Oh God, yes! It was Orla, of course. I couldn't see from my angle. Oh, he's mad about rugby. Don't you think he's showing a lot of promise for a beginner?" Really, she was going to have to learn the rules of the damn game. She never had a clue what the children were saying on the way home from their matches and training sessions. Most awkward of all was delivering her passengers to their waiting mothers, struggling to cobble together some semblance of a narrative on the morning's events. It wasn't working anyway. She had hoped that by making her Volvo XC90 the unofficial club bus, she would become invaluable to these women. She had daydreamed of coffee mornings and race meetings and girls' nights out. Instead, more often than not, they simply replied that if she was sure it wasn't inconvenient, and if she was sure she didn't mind, they hopped back into their own cars and scarpered. Alice did know the rules of Gaelic football and hurling, but that was even worse. She had already wasted 2 miserable, freezing years at the GAA Juvenile Academy to no avail. There was simply no one worth meeting there. The parents were friendly enough, but they had no style and no get up and go. Alice had decided it was time to quit. Orla had been already resigned to leaving. He added Gaelic football to the lengthening list of activities sampled and abandoned. Piano, modern dance, speech and drama. He was keen on athletics, and every September he raised the issue again, but his mother wouldn't hear of it. "The athletics club is rubbish, the track's lousy and the facilities dirt poor. There's not even a clubhouse, just an old storage container and a few portaloos." Orla couldn't understand her objections. He didn't spend any time in the clubhouses. Alice looked towards the field again. Her sons, Orla and Alton, were buried deep in a mass of struggling bodies. There was a ball somewhere in the melee. She didn't feel it was worth getting too au fait with the rules, because apparently they kept changing, and as the children got older and more physical. Her extent of understanding was that a ruck occurred when everyone fell upon each other by design, whereas in a mall it was by accident. Undoubtedly, there was more to it than that. A line-out was self-explanatory, kick to touch was an expression radio reporters used to describe government dithering, but had obviously originated in some mysterious manoeuvre on the rugby field. A tug at the hem of her short Barber jacket announced the arrival of her daughter from the nursery group on pitch 2. Thank God, 12 o'clock at last. Little Aisha was pinched and raw. Honestly, why choose winter to play the game? At least the GAA had the sense to curtail children's activities at Halloween. Bundling the child into a warm puffa, she tousled her daughter's hair. She loved all her children equally, of course, but with Aisha, there was the anticipated added bonus of long, satisfying trips to Belfast and Dublin in years to come, maybe New York. They would go to Brown Thomas and Harvey Nicks. The boys, however, would happily leave the house wearing 2 refuge sacks, tied at the waist with string. Her husband constantly complained about the children's designer gear. Jesus, Alice, it'll fit her for about 6 weeks. It's a total waste of money. Don't be such a miserable git, Alice robustly declared. There are no pockets in a shroud. She had even taken the trouble to look up shroud in the dictionary to make sure she had understood her friend's expression correctly. She allowed herself a moment's brief disloyalty, sitting with the large book in her hand. After all, what woman has not occasionally wondered how much more peaceful and prosperous her life would be after sorrowfully redeeming her husband's life insurance policies? Frank could be a bit of a bore sometimes, crushing her enthusiasm and reining in her more exuberant plans. She had got her way with the children's names, however. Alice and Frank, she mused. Frank and Alice. Instantly forgettable. All her life she had resented her name. Alice. How she had longed for an elaborate Irish name. She had never once been able to spell her name even, nor to explain its ancient Celtic symbolism. She had a list of prospective names for her unborn, even unconceived children. Aileen, Mankin, Faulkner. Her husband had countered with his own list. Schnockta, Uachtarocha, Dún an Doras. Eventually they had reached 3 compromises. Jesus Christ, Alice, I'm past caring. Christen the baby ear fluff if you really want to. He can always change it when he's old enough. The final whistle blew. The children clapped and leaped as their coach roared out some tawdry inspirational rubbish about the best club in Ireland. Alice packed her own 3 and 3 others into the jeep and pulled slowly out of the car park. Really, the spaces were far too small these days. Listening to the childish chatter with half an ear, she reflected on the 3 good friends to whom she would now call. She would go to Rachel last. Rachel was the cream of the crop. Her home was immaculate. She had only 1 child, Alice reminded herself. Rachel served her guests their choice of half a dozen teas, each woman presented with her own beautiful tiny pot. When Rachel gave Alice a prawn sandwich or a plate of tiny samosas, a small sprig of parsley rested on top, freshly cut out of a flourishing windowsill garden. Yes, she would go to Rachel last. She might be invited in. She pulled into the driveway of Susan's house first. Sue was a strange girl, really. Alice might have to find a way out of this relationship. She gave you builder's tea, strong enough to trot a mouse across. Oh, revolting expression. In whichever thick-rimmed receptacle came to hand, she even used gaudy beakers, which had contained Easter eggs in years gone by. Sometimes she rinsed the beaker out in cold water before filling it and handing it over. No sign of actually washing it. Alice usually dropped Sue's son off first. She had once heard Sue say that she agreed with Professor Henry Higgins. The essence of good manners is not how you treat people, but that you must treat everyone exactly the same. Alice didn't know who Professor Higgins was. He was never on the radio, not like the gorgeous economics professor, Constance what's-his name, but she wholeheartedly disagreed with him. If only Sue wasn't so nice. She listened attentively and never interrupted. She could be trusted not to reveal an indiscreet disclosure or a moment of unguarded vulgarity. She was thoughtful. She was the type to turn up at your door with a casserole when your dog died or your mother was ill. Unfortunately, Alice had to throw the casserole away. The dish was chipped and harbouring God knows what germs. But still, it was a kind gesture. She might hold on to Sue for a little longer. Out of charity. Oh, thanks, Pet. I'd love to come in, but I've a whole car full today. Maybe during the week. I'll call you. Bye. She inched the massive Volvo backwards out of Sue's small gateway and on towards Maria. Alice wasn't sure about Maria. She was not particularly friendly. She never invited Alice in for coffee. She was scrupulous about returning favours. She would insist on allowing Alice to return early from rugby training next week, as soon as Aisha's junior group was finished. Then Maria would pull into Alice's road later on, Orla and Alton crammed into her little Nissan, her own son on a booster seat in the front. She never called it a favour. She called it a rota. It's difficult to cultivate a friendship with someone who never allows themselves to be under an obligation, thought Alice. Maria used to be friendlier. During their first weeks at the rugby academy, she'd been quite chatty. Once she mentioned that she sang at the local chamber choir. Alice had jumped at the opportunity. I love music. I adore singing in the chamber choir. When are the rehearsals? I'm not a great singer, but more than good enough for a choir. Maria winced. Confusion ensued as Maria explained that the music could be difficult, complex. Come to church to meet Father Dennis. He runs the choir. He has a real passion for the music, especially Monteverdi and Vivaldi. Vivaldi? That's the English guy with the spiky black hair. Used to be never off the TV. I saw him once. He had a huge, great boil on his neck. Every time the camera did a close-up, you could see the boil bobbing along to the music, so close to the violin. I thought I was going to burst. Honestly, it made me want to barf. What the hell? Maria was looking at her in a very odd fashion, eyes narrow, lips quivering. What are you on about? Oh my God. Do you mean Nigel Kennedy? Vivaldi is the composer, you know. It's a chamber choir, chamber music, Gloria in excelsis Deo. Chamber music? A choir that sings chamber music? Oh, I don't think I'd be interested in that. I thought you meant the choir of the Chamber of Commerce? For some reason, Maria had maintained a little distance after that. Oh well, last drop off now. Luckily, Rachel was free and invited everyone in. It was always a little difficult to control Alice's 3 muddy children in Rachel's pristine home. Frank said the house was like a modern art gallery, and it wasn't a compliment. As Aisha accidentally wiped her jam donut down Rachel's white oak doorframe, Alice decided it was time to leave. Don't worry, said Rachel, face red and sulky. It's great to have the house full of happy, noisy kids for a change. While speaking, she was scrubbing at the doorframe with a lint-free cloth soaked in white spirits. A little hissing sound escaped her lips as she straightened up and glanced at Aisha. Promising a longer chat and a good catch-up some day next week, Rachel waved goodbye and closed her front door firmly. Alice drove away, turning over and savouring the few snippets of news they had managed to exchange between the irritating child-related distractions. What a bitch! I'm glad she doesn't talk about me like that.